G'day groovy gardening guardians of the earth. It's me, the Crystal Starseed here, and on this week's episode we're talking about spirituality in the garden. And this could very well be the second last episode of a year in the garden, a year in a natural, organic, permaculture, sustainable, life-giving garden. And I was getting upset that the subject of spirituality in the garden has fallen behind. So far behind, it's now the topic of the second last episode. But now that I'm making the video, I'm actually happy. I'm actually happy about it because I'm realizing the personal things I'm about to share may have turned some people off to the practical gardening information that I also share. But the truth of the matter is, the majority of this gardening information, the way I garden, came by connecting spiritually with my garden and with nature. So it really is a cornerstone of the way I garden and of the techniques, tricks and tips and knowledge. Everything I share about gardening is so deeply entwined into mystical and spiritual aspects, unconventional at this point in time aspects of gardening. And I've proven the physical reality of this through this video series, but it's been very very yang based, and we need more yin. We've had the very masculine, physical, how to hands-on do it in this physical reality. But in my opinion, the truth is that the spiritual reality comes first and builds the physical reality. So in that aspect, it's even more of an important aspect to the way I garden. I'm actually so passionate about this that I'm super nervous and don't know how to present it because I want to do it so perfectly. So I'm going to actually do this video the same way I garden and just let it come out. So we'll see what happens. Let's just jump in. So I definitely don't want to teach you how to be spiritual in the garden. I think that is totally opposite to the way spirituality in the garden works. I think it happens naturally, even when people are working with unsustainable, silly methods in the garden. They still can have positive mental, spiritual, psychological, and physical benefits just because they're working with reality. And by reality, I mean a physical manifestation of the system that creates and sustains all life. So it is a reality that created our physical beings, a reality that we need to survive. We need the earth, we need the air, we need the fire, we need the water to physically be. So working with nature is working with reality. Not only did this system create us and everything in existence, but it's a successful system compared to our man-made systems. This system is perpetual. It recycles energy perfectly. Not only can it self-perpetuate life, but then that life it creates and sustains, creates the environment and byproduct of more life and more diversity. This has been noted by so many different cultures, peoples, races, and religions throughout history. The success of this force, of this system, of these sacred laws of nature and science are successful ways to create things and to sustain them. And not only did so many ancient cultures and even modern cultures and cultures of today have recognized nature's success in doing what it does. They've also recognized that if they map out nature's techniques, work out nature's systems, the universe's systems, the systems of life, and then apply them to their own lives, they have the same perpetual successful results. And this has been noted throughout time. Like I've said, the amazing thing about this knowing that many humans have had and have with the force of nature crosses all boundaries of humanity, all illusionary man-made beliefs like religions, borders, countries. This using nature as an example and as a metaphor on how to live your life and even how to manifest what you want in your life. This is in scriptures, in the Bible, carved into stone. There are so many fantastic, great one-liners or phrases noting the systems of nature and how obviously they should be applied to your life to achieve the same perpetual success that nature has when using that system. And nature the word nature, I'm feeling at the moment, minimizes this force. The force of nature is the force of the universe, the megaverse, the multiverse, the microverse, the macroverse, the infinite verse, the everyverse. This is the force of life, and I believe the garden and nature is the best place to fall back into alignment with this force, because the ultimate truth at the end of the day is we are this force, and it's just our belief in the disconnection from all that is that holds us back from our true potential as humans. And I've given that hint in the intro of so many of my episodes. That's why I say gardening guardians of the earth, because this system working on earth, the systems of plants, fungi, bacteria, insects, life, animals, reptiles, this whole combination of life created the ingredients for the human body to be born, to flourish, to grow, to develop. The earth, this garden of earth, the earth is a garden when she is healthy, created us. And our true power as humans at the end of the day is that we can protect the earth or destroy the earth. We can help the earth to flourish, or we can drain it dead. That is a supreme power to have on this planet, and we are capable of both. And my logical mind says that this beautiful force of nature that seems to create so much abundance of variety of life would have created humanity to tend the garden, because we can. But every power, everything in the universe has its opposite. And when we are in reverse, when we are going backwards, we are destroyers. We aren't gardeners. And it's no coincidence that the word guardian is combined with the word gardener, because when you are a true gardener, when you are gardening with sustainable, organic, natural, permaculture methods, you are guarding the system of life on this planet that sustains everything. You are a true guardian of Earth, and I think it's so fitting that the word guardian is combined with gardener. And of course, a gardener guardians over their patch. That's obvious, but that patch is providing biodiversity of life, helping the life around it thrive, giving us all oxygen, recycling the carbon everybody's so frantic about. The problem isn't too much carbon. The problem isn't it's not good to have pollution at all, but the true problem on Earth, if you trace so many environmental issues back, it's to the depletion of the Earth's garden. And when the Earth is in a healthy state, that means the majority of the literal Earth is a flourishing garden in whatever form it might take. And just coming to my mind right now, I'm about to talk about the positive effects a garden can have on you personally. I'm thinking, why wouldn't those effects be worldwide if our forests were replaced? Not only our forests were replaced, but the damage done from the ages of human disturbance be restored. Europe lost the majority of its forests before it set sail and started conquering other countries. That's how Europe used to be forested. It lost its forest hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And now the newer countries that are facing so-called development have barely any forests left at all. The world used to be covered in forests. It's actually so bad, we don't really have any mature trees on Earth. There are a handful of ancient trees, and there are a lot of trees that can live to be ancient, but they have all been cut down. Well, they've all been lost, and the majority of them by human hands. Our forests, the forests that we think are old forests, the majority of them are young forests. We have lost the old trees. A lot of the stumps are still there, but the trees are gone. Even in the area I live in, a weird remote area in the mountains in Australia, I see the black and white pictures of the loggers, the first white settlers who came through and cleared timber from these mountains. And the trees that are cut in the back of those pictures, I grew up in these mountains. I've never seen any trees as big as the ones in the black and white pictures of my own area. And my area wasn't, we've still got mountains full of trees. The whole thing wasn't cleared, but it was cleared to the extent that's what's left now are baby trees. And we think that's an old forest. So the whole point of that, to reiterate, was what would be the positive effect on the whole planet if not only these forests were replaced, but we once again had gigantic ancient trees all around the planet. Now, it's always shown in gardening shows, and there's a few documentaries showing how when gardens were set up in low-income, troubled areas of the world, and especially in cities, that area, that suburb, that block of flats would change for the better. And I experienced this myself in my own garden, so I may as well use myself. And as an example, I lived on the dirtiest, dingiest street in Richmond, Kingston Street. Go check it out in Richmond, Melbourne. Well, the gardens might still look nice there, but when I moved there, it was horrible, and my two neighbours had 9 feet high fences that you couldn't see over, just blocking their own views from the dirty street. Not only was it an ugly cement factory-like street, but there was litter and horrible shit all over it. And this is when I really needed more space to garden, so I guerrilla gardened the whole area. I put in a peach tree, a wattle tree, heaps of jade. I made a rocket patch in the dirty old car park across the street, and beautified my own front garden. There's footage of that garden. Probably the first video on this channel shows my garden in Kingston Street, and the energy and beauty and the love of that garden and the plants around. My two neighbours who had their fences up all of a sudden came out. They love the garden. My neighbor next door took her fence down to about 4 feet high. So our gardens kind of joined and blended. And then my other neighbor across the road, she gutted her whole garden area because it was just ugly cement and just nothing. She ripped it all apart and made the most beautiful courtyard garden, and the 3 gardens together became this almost suburb attraction for all the locals. We had all the old Greek ladies come down. We had the old Chinese man come down who never used to talk to anybody, but when these gardens got going, he eventually came over and we became friends. And it created this community where we all of a sudden knew each other and everyone was saying hello, and we were all trading plants. All the old ladies in the area were taking cuttings from me and then bringing me cakes and biscuits and treats at Christmas and Easter. And I truly became friends. Like, it was a community. It went from everybody not knowing each other. And I felt, before this vibe of love and community was flourishing, I actually felt the vibe of fear. These same old ladies beforehand were side-eyeing me as they walked past me in the street as if I was a potential criminal, and they were right to do it because there were so many robberies, so much violence, so many drugs in that area. But we created our little paradise, and even the school at the very, very end of the street had a really good gardener who made an awesome garden there. So it was all connected all the way down the street. Everybody knew each other. I had been, sorry, talking too fast. I had been to everybody's house to morning tea. We had all traded veggies, plants, and to this day, some of the plants I got and seeds from those old ladies are some of my best plants that I sell at all the markets that I've never seen anywhere else. But we're not off topic, but that was a great example about how the energy of a garden has such a positive effect, and I've seen that example in documentaries and TV shows as well. It's really just another example of nature's successful, sustainable systems in action, and humans, just by being open to it, because we are it, falling back into alignment with this system. We don't have to learn it because we are it, and it doesn't matter what we do, but we can use this system as an example, and there's systems within the system, so we can use any of these systems as examples of how to live our life and how to get things done. And more often than not, a troubled person will walk away with a healthier perspective, feeling lighter and better than they did. Now, this should be an obvious sign to the whole of humanity that being in alignment with this system and this force of life is the key to happiness. And of course it is, because it is us, and it never feels good to deny the greater part of yourself. So I know someone out there is probably thinking, oh, this philosophy and theory and oh, this happened to me is all very well and good, but I need more proof. I need more nuts and bolts of how spirituality in the garden works to really take it seriously. Well, I'll tell you right now, you don't even need to take it seriously for it to happen, because by working with reality, things just get more real. And the more, isn't that what spirituality is about? Being more real, learning how to be more real, figuring out what's real, creating something real. But we can get more real with it. And these are theories and topics I've thought about a lot, and I've never seen them written down or discussed, and I'm all over the gardening scene. So I'm happy to be cutting the edge of these topics right now. So gardening helps you Sorry, I've never actually spoken about this out loud. My mind's grasping for the words. So, gardening forces you into the present moment. Now, you're probably thinking, so what, the present moment? But having access to the present moment or being able to get there can bring so much relief to so many psychological and mental problems, thus giving relief to the body. And this also works on a metaphysical level. There are whole theories based around the power of the present moment. There's even a book called The Power of Now. And in my own gardening adventures, I've experienced that when my mind is caught up in a negative spiral, that when I'm gardening, my mind switches back and forth from gardening to the negative thought, from gardening to, it's like a coin, spinning and spinning, slowing down. And eventually I get to this point on the seesaw where the garden ends up winning and taking over. And if I spend enough time there in this almost mental tug of war between what I'm doing in the garden and the mental negative spiral of my mind, the garden always wins this tug of war. And I walk away from the garden feeling this relief, like that train of thought is over. I've found a new perspective. And this is just a theory. I think being on that seesaw and my mind being forced to make the decision to choose a better thought over and over again. And the better thought is just gardening. It's pruning this plant. It's digging this hole. It's putting the compost under a rock. It's laying down the mulch. These are all positive things that nature does herself naturally. So in a real physical sense, we are realigning with this force, and on a metaphysical quantum level, what a great base point for creation. So this simple act of focusing on doing nice, good things in the garden, this can give people the first mental relief they've had in years. And then by making a routine of this interaction with nature, a new routine, retraining their brain patterns to be in the now on a regular basis, not only brings relief, but paves the way to positive thinking. And this positive mental growth is reflected in the garden, or the garden's positive growth is reflected within you. Either way, there's a physical and visual reward. Not only a physical and visual reward while this mental improvement is growing, but there's flavor reward. If you're growing fruits and vegetables, there's scent reward from the essential oils and flowers. So the physical senses are being rewarded with the beauty of life itself, while it's finding itself again in the now, in true reality, which on a psychological, psychiatric, physical level is creating the perfect brain conditions to start rebalancing those chemicals and releasing the chemicals we need to feel good about ourselves, to give our bodies energy, ambition, drive, inspiration. A great way to look at energy bodies as well. We have the spiritual aspect, this system which permeates through every realm. We can align our minds with this system by focusing on it, and even further working with it physically. So our mental body, our minds are aligned with this system. Our physical body is aligned with this system. And there's a trickle-down effect of goodness. And sometimes people don't even start in the garden to get to the garden. Sometimes they start by wanting to improve their own bodies. And so they start eating healthier, they start eating cleaner. They feel the drive to grow their own food. Lo and behold, 10 years later, they've got a beautiful garden and couldn't imagine life without it, because it benefits them in so other ways than just having clean, healthy food. Just like somebody can be looking for relief for mental issues and can be led into nature, into the garden, realizing that being aligned with this energy, this reality, this system benefits them on all different levels. It's a very personal journey, your private interaction with nature and how you learn and grow and the reactions you have. Even negative experiences in your garden and in nature, you can still walk out with a higher perspective or a release. For instance, I had a great experience, a great example with a friend of mine. We were digging out really old azaleas, I think they're called, and the root stumps were so deep and hard to get out, and it seemed like such a daunting, horrible process. And at the same time, we both had a bit of, or maybe a lot of pent-up anger that we needed to get out. And this is a funny thing a lot of natural and sensitive gardeners have noticed. The garden seems to reflect the lesson you need to learn in the moment. So I could feel my frustration with trying to get these azalea stumps out of the ground start to connect and line up with my frustration I had in life at that point in time. And instead of pushing away my external issue, my problems, my frustrating issue, instead of pushing that away and then trudging through trying to get these azaleas out, I thought, no, I am going to channel this anger and take the pick and shovel and get out every azalea stump. And I knew that my friend also needed to release some anger, and she was looking so tired and so over it, like she couldn't go on, and she was looking daunted by the sight of all these stumps we had to remove. So I said, you've just been through this, aren't you angry? Let's release it right now. And we both took the tools and we ripped through every azalea stump like it was effortless. And by the end of it, we were so happy and laughing, and all the anger was released. And she even had her own private healing miracle take place without even trying. She'd been having a health problem, and during that day in the garden, it cleared up, and to my knowledge, it's still good. So that's another thing. Being in the moment relaxes the body so much that things can realign, chemicals can rebalance, and when you are feeling that frustration or negativity, it always comes from a deeper and personal place. And when working in the garden, feeling frustrated and negative, what a great opportunity to give those negative feelings a healthy outlet and to give them presence and their time to be, to come, to flow, and to go. Just like music and art can release emotional wounds, pent up negative vibrations and feelings, so can gardening. And you don't have to do it deliberately. It just happens. You just get frustrated in the garden, and you can feel that frustration is your own life, or else you wouldn't be frustrated. It would just be a challenge. The frustration comes from you. So whether people recognize it or not, when they are having these experiences in the garden, it's a mirror effect. The garden is mirroring us in a certain way. Or you could say psychologically, we're projecting ourselves on the garden, and by embracing this projection and working with it within the systems of nature that you're implementing physically in the garden. So while you are building and working with a healthy system, also embracing the negativity of now that you're feeling, it's a life hack to personal growth. Now, this system broken down can be seen in the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, Hertz frequencies, the color wheel, our musical scale, reflected in the way plants grow, and that tip of perfection, the end of the equation, is the beauty of a flower and the creation of more seeds, of more abundance, multiplying unto itself, self-perpetuating itself, not only sustainably, but there's such overflow that comes from this system. It creates more life, more biodiversity, more beauty, more excellence, more wonders. Think of the extreme complexities of our multiverse. We haven't even scratched the surface of what this force is capable of. So when our teeny tiny problems are reflected into this great intelligence and we're consciously working with it, if only to build our own small veggie patch, we still see the truth of ourselves, because we are one with this system. We are just a soup of atoms in this illusion of oneness that we perceive to learn about ourselves. And nature is providing, of course nature is providing that reflection for us. She created us. She is us. Even if you believe it's just natural psychological projection of hidden negative aspects of yourself coming out in your imagination while working with nature, this is still on a scientific level the system and the force of life. So by just working alongside it can be a loophole and a life hack to self-development, a way to work on and to relieve and to get rid of negative subconscious issues alongside life, alongside this great system, alongside God or Goddess, strengthening our weak spots in a sustainable way that makes them sometimes even our true strength. And gardening in a kind of way was like that for me. A strength, an untapped strength of mine that I didn't think anything of, that I didn't think was important, that I didn't think anybody cared about. So it's pretty fitting that I'm talking about all this, because I've seen it personally. I've seen it in layers. I've seen it. And I really want to say at this point, you do not have to be a passionate, crazy gardener like me to find evolution, happiness, health and all this in your life, although it is a life hack to it. Everybody should be a part of the natural world because it's reality and it gives life and it's healthy and sustains us and sustains the future for our kind. But we all have different gifts to bring to the world. So some people have to spend more time outside of nature to create and add to this beautiful reality in a positive way. And because working with the system again, you can then have the same results in any area of life when working with the system. And I want to say working for the system, but I don't want the system to, oh, this God hovering above you, you have to work for this system. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. We are this system. All we have to do is recognize it and fall back into alignment with it. And there's nothing wrong with disconnecting from this system and trying out man-made or your own man-invented systems. But I have to say, I think all of our inventions on this planet have been modeled from aspects of nature. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, I can't think of anything. And yeah, well, people may have invented it, but everything that has been invented, nature also does, but does sustainably. So we really have the ultimate textbook blueprint of life, of how to live, of how to get things done, of how to be happy and healthy and beautiful, just by looking to nature, looking where nature is happy, healthy and beautiful, where things are successful, where life is abundant and happy, or noticing that success of life creates more abundant and happy life. So that's a good marker of knowing whether you're working with this system. When you are falling back into alignment, using this system to live your life, to get what you want out of life done, is it having a multi-abundant success? Is it giving abundance and life and creating more diverse abundance and life and creativity around you? Or is it taking from the earth? Is it putting people out? Is it making others have less? That's a good way to check. What are the results? Are the results like the results of Mother Earth, like the sacred maths and science of the universe? Are they giving beauty, harmony, abundant life? Or are they destroying and leaving nothing? Because if they're sucking or taking more than they're giving, then you need to look to nature and tweak the way you're living your life. If you want to take advantage of being a part of life itself, embracing reality, exploring what it means to be a human here and now on this planet Earth. Now, permaculture is almost like a Bible of how to use these systems in a physical way to build gardens and regenerate the earth. And it has a natural, of course, regenerating effect, because when using these systems, it creates more life, more biodiversity, blah, blah, blah. But these same permaculture systems can be overlaid in so many areas, in every area of your life. The benefit of working with these systems in nature on a personal level is that nature reflects what you need in that current moment, or what you're ready for in that current moment, good or bad, for your evolution to your personal happiness. Whereas just reading and knowing the systems, you may not know when it's the right time to apply them, or which is the right system to overlay on which life problem, which is also another problem with religions and a lot of spirituality. There's all the best information in the world available to anyone, but where and how to use it is the real question that only you can answer for yourself. And since we are all one, why not join up with a higher part of yourself that knows more, and in the moment, in the now, embrace what you're feeling and doing with the earth, with nature, and let the two become one again. It's really about finding yourself and becoming whole naturally, learning who you are and becoming who you want to be. And that brings me to the next level. I've been talking about, how aligning yourself with nature can help overcome troubles, but it can also amplify positive things. And when troubles are overcome and people have reached a better place while working with the garden, by this stage they should have something pretty nice going on, which is in turn giving them even more good energy. I'm telling you that when working with this system, the abundance multiplies in spectacular ways. When positive things are rooted in this system and grow from this system, it can really bring so much joy and achievement, perpetual joy, lasting joy, joy not at the expense of anyone, riches not at the expense of the world, of third world countries, of the environment, but your riches, your wealth, emotional wealth, physical wealth, all that will be rooted and based in sustainable, life-giving systems. A great saying that applies here is, what you do to get something is what you'll have to do to keep it. So not only by using these systems are we creating sustainable success, but this system does things the easy way. And permaculturists know that. Permaculture to the outsider may look hard, difficult, a lot of work, but that's only in the beginning. Every year it gets easier with permaculture because permaculture uses the same natural systems of the universe that you're working with and creating with. And there's a great saying that really applies here. What you do to get something is what you'll have to do to keep it. And this system knows how to do things the easy way, even if it looks a bit funny to us disconnected humans at first. In the long run, these systems presented to us in the natural world have had a gazillion years to perfect themselves. So by working with this system and doing things the easy way, you'll get things done the easy way, and all that you need to keep this system going is to keep doing things the easy way. Oh my God, I can't believe I've been talking for over 40 minutes. I feel like I've been talking for 5 minutes. Now, I'm all like, this is the easy way, blah, blah, blah. How do you trigger that system, that journey in your life? And the way it happened for me is I decided I wanted to build a garden, and I knew that I wanted to do it naturally and for free. So that forced me to look around and to look at how things were successful in nature and how things were growing for free in the natural world, because I loved the beauty of the natural world. So I just took cues from the natural world and slowly started building a garden. And the garden was so successful that I ended up managing the community garden in the Abbotsford Convent in Melbourne for Lentil as Anything for 3 years. And it wasn't till after I started working there that I learnt what permaculture was, even though I was a fully practicing permaculturalist. So that's a great way to initiate this journey of falling back into alignment with nature, with yourself, rediscovering yourself on truer and higher levels, to find happiness and create what you want in this world. Build a natural garden using only natural things for free, no money. For instance, I noticed that the best soil in my yard was under where the leaves had been piled up year after year. I noticed that the soil was rich and fluffy, and I noticed that the leaf buildup in the gutters also made beautiful soil. I knew that after bushfires, that young plants would regenerate with so much life, energy, and vigor from the nutrients in the ash. I knew that organic matter, compost, dead bodies, dead animals, when broken down, also nourished plants. So I just started putting it all into the soil, anything natural, off milk. In the fridge, I remember a big can of molasses went off. I started digging holes and burying all the weeds in holes, pouring ash around, and I saw on a gardening show they made green manure by breaking down leafy green matter from weeds into a green slimy fertilizer liquid. I poured that over the mess of organic material on the garden, and it all just melted down into the soil, and I created such amazing soil which grew great gardens year after year. And at that point I thought I was just magic, but it was too good. I was having professional gardeners think that I was a professional gardener. I was being offered work as a professional gardener and had no formal training. So I started to investigate a little deeper on YouTube, and this is why I love YouTube so much, and I'm a real big fan of YouTube because YouTube helped me learn why it worked. It helped me learn that I was feeding the fungus and the good bacteria and the good microbes. I've always been drawn to cottage gardens, to natural looking gardens, to showy decorative plants and edibles in a cottage garden setting. So that's a very natural, copying nature. The way the plants are grown together is the way that plants grow successfully in nature together. So by building a garden naturally, for free, with what was available closest around me, with the aim to have it self-sufficient as possible and natural looking as possible. Now, when I say self-sufficient, on a personal level, I really obviously enjoy gardening. So I'm happy to have some plants that need extra love and care. But the way I garden, if you cut those plants out, it's really minimal work at the end of the day. And after 3 years, it should just be general maintenance of what's there, unless there are tender annuals or tender decoratives that you've personally chosen because you want them. But that can all be replaced with more hardy plants that can give you similar, if not almost the same results. So look to nature on how to work with nature, and the journey begins. I think I've summed up all the main aspects of spirituality in the garden that I wanted to cover. And I'm really not satisfied with this presentation. And I've tried to do it before and deleted it because I wasn't satisfied. And that's because I want it to be better, more comprehensive, more thought out, lineal and logical. But I've been working a lot at 2 organic farms, plus my own garden, plus my own small business selling plants. So I haven't had the time to sit down and map it all out, group together the information, images, and quotes and references. That's how good I want to make a video about spirituality in the garden. But this New Earth series has all just been off the top of my head, so that's what I'm doing here. And it's also going to help me map out a future version of this. And I plan on doing a documentary short version, but more comprehensive, with better visuals of the whole process I spoke about throughout the Gardening for the New Earth series. And this new project I'm calling Gardening the Sacred Way, where the spiritual element is going to be at the forefront and tied in to every aspect, because it is the metaphysical, the quantum element is at the heart of this system. And just because things are unseen by the eye now does not make them any less real or powerful. Gravity is unseen. Radio, television, mobile phone frequencies are unseen. The magnetic power of the poles, the magnetic shield around the earth that protects us from radiation and debris. Well, you can see it when you're looking at the aurora borealis, but there is so much unseen, and we see a fraction of visible light. The majority of what's around us we cannot see with our physical eyes yet. Well, maybe some people can with their physical eyes open, but on a purely scientific level, we can't even see what's in front of us. So the quantum, metaphysical, and spiritual aspect to me is that unseen reality. And because it is reality, because it is truth, all these concepts I've mentioned now are reflected psychologically, scientifically, spiritually. And on that note, the Kabbalah is a great map of these different energies, cycles, and systems, and how one leads into the next, and how to pinpoint where you are within the system of life and where to go next to get to where you want to go in the end. I made that sound really confusing. The Kabbalah is basically a map of the way energy works. And there are many of these maps that have been made by different cultures to help them see where they are on the energy wheel so they can get where they want to be. So that wraps up this portion of the video, and it looks like it's going to be a crazy long video. I thought I was going to sit down and make this 20-minute video, and well, luckily I don't have to work tomorrow, so we're really getting into it. The second part of this video, I'm going to talk about my own mystically, spiritually, metaphysical, uncommon experiences with gardening, to drive home everything I've just spoken about, really, and to have a bit of a chat. So when I was 15, I ran away from home so I could be a witch, basically, so I could be free to practice my craft in peace. One thing led to another, and I was living with a friend who, I wouldn't say he had psychic training, but he grew up with a clairvoyant mother who also had other spiritual skills. So he was brought up in an environment where all that was normal, and he had, I guess, taught himself how to astro travel from a really young age, so he was really good at it. So here I am, 15, I want to know all the spiritual secrets of the universe, and I find myself living with someone who can go out of body and explore the universe. I could ramble on side stories to give you proof of this person's ability, but that's not what this is about. And you can take this as a good yarn, or you can believe me, I don't mind, but this is my truth and my personal story. This person had a great talent for astro traveling and could see the hidden world as he moved about in his astral body. So for fun, well, I thought it was fun, I would ask him to do all sorts of things out of body, to look at things and then relay back to me what he saw. Then it came to mind one day for me to ask him to start talking to things, to start talking to animals when he was astro traveling, to start talking to images, to pictures, to paintings. And he was getting responses, quite amazing responses. So eventually I asked him to communicate with our guides, our spirit guides. And that's when stuff really started happening. Right back then, when I was 15, 16, our guides literally told us how reality works, how the universe works, but we didn't have enough, we didn't understand. We didn't know how to comprehend what they were saying. I took things too literally and too minimally, so I didn't, even though I was told as plainly as possible how this world works, I still couldn't, it took me years and years to understand those first messages that our guides told him. He wasn't channeling. He was going out of body, having conversations, and then coming back into his body and telling me what happened. So long story short, we ended up in a bit of a pickle and needed a new place to live, and we needed it fast. So we did a spell, and it worked. We got an amazing place that we shouldn't have been able to get because I was underage for starters, and we were basically just street kids. But this place was on top of the biggest hill in town, overlooking the whole town, with a beautiful handmade vegetable and decorative garden that had been lovingly tended for decades by the owner and his wife, but his wife was sick and he was out of town mostly, and we had the bottom flat under the house and the whole garden with a beautiful view, so much fresh produce for free, and he told us to help ourselves. And I was no stranger from eating from the garden because I'd grown up doing that with my grandparents and my dad, and even my mum had a vegetable garden, so I recognized the vegetables and dug in. So thank you, Horus, for that house all the way back then, almost 20 years ago or something. The spell involved asking the god Horus. Our guides told us to use the god Horus in our spell because he was an eagle and could fly high and find the best house for us. So as you can see by this point, we were working with our guides all day. Anytime something came up, I wanted to know the spiritual aspect of us. And our guides really let us into the garden. They kept, when we had a problem, when we needed an ingredient, when, I was really interested in ritual magic back then as a teenager, which I'm not so much in anymore, but being a teenager, I was driven to ritual magic, and anytime I wanted to know what to use for rituals, we would be directed to plants in the garden, and the guides would teach us about the plant and the different energies that plant brought. They would always give a plant an element like earth, air, fire, or water, and that would help us to learn how to then use that plant in different rituals according to what element it held. And some some plants would have more than one element. Some plants could embody the 4 elements. And because of the guides always sort of referring us into the plant world, we started to become obsessed with the plant world. And long story short, we ended up having quite a decent coven of runaway teenagers. Not really, but yeah, I was kind of directing this ragtag coven. And then came a point where the guides refused to tell us what plant was good for what. They said they would only teach us how to know ourselves, and if we truly tried and gave it our best effort, they would tell us if we were wrong or right, and if we tried and really couldn't get it, then they would give us the answer, but we had to try first, which was a great trick on their behalf on teaching us how to use our intuition deliberately instead of just intuition falling upon you. They taught us how to direct our intuition. And I'll tell you what they said. They said it's the first thought that comes into your head. Now that sounds really easy and simple, but I learnt fast that I did not trust my first thought. And without fail, the first bunch of times that I tried to figure it out for myself or use my own knowing to know what the plant was good for in ritual magic, the first thought came so fast and swift, I didn't have to think about it, and I didn't even it would just happen, and then I would think about what the plant was good for. Then I would give my answer, and the guides would say, no, it's good for this. And I would be like, no, that's what I thought. So I learnt not to think, and I had confidence in channeling that answer because I always heard it in my head. So even when I got it wrong, I was always like, no, because I thought that, but I thought it might have been that because of it just showed me how untrusting I was of my first thought and how fast I would dismiss it and start creating a story and why it had to be this. It all happens in a split second, but it was a great way for me to identify my intuition accurately and to realize when I was just making it up. And being in a ragtag runaway coven, things eventually burnt themselves out, and our hearts weren't advanced enough for the magic that we were wielding. And yeah, we got burnt. Even some of my friends throughout recent years may have seen the fear in my eyes when they've suggested ritual magic or doing a spell. And these friends are only working with pure, simple, loving magic for the good of all and the free will of all. But being in a group of teenage runaway, being in a witch coven at that age, yeah, it was wild. So I kind of blocked all that out. But one of the good experiences I take with me from that whole trip is that time spent in the garden working with plants in such an unconventional and magical way. There was a good year where that was the daily routine. We were young, we weren't working. We somehow had a beautiful home with a beautiful garden thanks to our spell. But after the whole thing was over, I I was just so burnt and burnt out. And I had also heard a comment or a quote, I don't know where from, but it just always rings through my head from around that time. Maybe the guides told us. Yeah, the guides did tell us. They would always say stuff like this. They would say, a real witch doesn't need to do a spell to make things happen. And all the spells at that point had gotten me into some hot water. So I decided to back away from using magic in a ritual setting to get things done, and started focusing on how to live in a magical way so things happened more naturally, natural magic. My guides were trying to show me the whole time. I just wasn't wise enough to get the message clearly yet. And when I was 18 and living on my own again, 17, 18, I created a beautiful garden in my backyard, and it became a magical hub for all of my friends in year 12 when we were 17 turning 18, the legal drinking and going out age and driving age. So we were having so many first experiences in that beautiful garden, and we all thrived from the energy. And even today, I bump into old friends from high school and they say, I still remember that beautiful garden that we all hang out in. I drove past it the other day just because of the memories, and I still didn't get the hint that that's what I was supposed to be doing. In fact, it came so easily that I didn't realize it was special. So by the age of 18, I had had that intense spiritual training, unconventional spiritual training in the garden with plants. So that's when I was 15, 16. By the time I was 18 and 19, I built a beautiful garden. I did do a few really beautiful rituals in it with some beautiful people, and they were beautiful, magical, pure, loving, good moments. And from the spiritual training earlier on, I knew that plants were extra magical. And at that stage, I was viewing them kind of like crystals, like just their presence has a positive effect. And every plant has a different kind of positive effect. If I could go back in time and talk to myself there and then in that garden at 18 years old, I would say just keep on going. What you've done here is awesome and will bring you so much happiness in life, just like it's bringing you happiness now. What you're enjoying right now, what you're good at right now is good for you. Follow this good moment. Build on this good foundation. It took me 10 wasted years of wandering around in circles, figuring out what to do with my life, until I rediscovered this connection to gardening. And the day I dedicated my life to gardening was the day I decided to base my life on what makes me happy. Not on what might make me happy, not what might make me happy in the future, what makes me happy today, what makes me happy in the moment. I decided to give that a try because living for some future success wasn't working out for me. And like I said, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. So that's a little sneaky peek into my life. Reasons why I've been more open to the spiritual aspect of things. So by the time I was in my late 20s and I decided to build an organic garden in Richmond, Melbourne, the one I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I was already well aware of there being a strong spiritual connection between plants and spiritual things, and I knew how to generally build a garden by watching my family, but I wasn't willing to buy anything for the garden, so I compromised by going all natural and free. And as this garden started flourishing, something started coming over me. I started really sensing and tapping in to an amazing positive force, which at this point I feel like basically tapping into Mother Earth herself. And I didn't know what was happening in the beginning, sitting in my garden that was growing more and more beautiful every day, while thinking more and more how I can make it more beautiful with what was naturally around me. This intelligence, this really beautiful energy was just coming upon me stronger and stronger every day, which ended up eventuating into flashes of information, of awareness about nature and the earth on higher and deeper levels. And the bulk of the spiritual information I gave in the first part of this video came as a knowing. When this energy built up to a peak, just a great knowing came upon me about what the earth is and about humans being guardians of the earth. And the philosophy I follow behind gardening all came from that peak of energy building. And you could say that's when the story really begins and some even more magical things start happening. But I've got to wrap this up because we've gone over an hour. But hey, it'll be a good thing to look out for in the documentary Gardening the Sacred Way, because I won't talk about anything I've just spoken about. I'll be talking about the magical series of events leading from there, which, like I said before, I was, when you're working with these natural systems and things start getting good and panning out, and you start building from that good foundation, what you build from there is a part of that source energy, that great force. It is aligned with, I can't wait to complete this new project I'm envisioning, Gardening the Sacred Way, because hopefully one of the reasons I don't want to continue on with the story is because, this is involving quite recent events, and I haven't asked everybody if they're comfortable with me talking about it, but hopefully I can get those people to talk about it with me together on camera for the next phase of my online gardening adventures. So I'll end my personal story there, and I'm just telling my story as a really fun example of the truth behind what I'm talking about, and I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. If you want to see for yourself, get involved in nature, use these natural systems in a loving, heartfelt, sensitive way, and find out for yourself if you have the same results I've been talking about. Now, I also made a pretty weak crystals in the garden video, but I just wanted to be honest about where I was at with crystals in the garden, and I have a lot of amateur experience, which boiled down to almost nothing constructive. But I have been learning more about crystals. I've been getting a little bit into the Vedic information about crystals. So I'm hoping to upgrade the crystal information, and if someone has experience with crystals in the garden, I'd love to hear about your experiences, because I feel as a collective we need to build up and combine all the information we have about using crystals with plants, because what's out there is very sketchy without too much rhyme or reason at the moment. But there could be so many ways of working with plants and crystals together. Their elemental energy, their planetary energy, their color, combined with all those energies of the plants, how they combine together in negative or positive ways, and how we can use that to our advantage. I would love there to be some sort of workable reference book of crystals and plants and their uses through history, and even scientific explanations for the results tested. I feel like it's actually such a big job to get this information out there in, one book or one source, that I would have to give up actually gardening to do it, and put all my energy into compiling the best crystal reference information book, manual, website that I could get together with all that's available. But because of the lack of information, it's all just so vague, and so everything works. Every crystal's good for every plant. That's what I'm really seeing out there. But as you would see in my crystals in the garden video, I'm having quite mixed results, negative and positive, with crystals, to the point where I'm not really willing to risk plants that I really want with crystals. I'm experimenting with using clear quartz as a crystal that could be good for all plants. So that's where I'm at the moment with crystals in the garden, but I really hope to bring you something decent about crystals in the garden, because I want it for myself. And I already made a basic off the top of my head video on moon gardening, another spiritual unseen energy aspect of gardening that cultures and peoples and countries have known and worked with throughout the ages, the invisible energies of the moon and the stars behind the moon, and the elemental energy that star constellation has while it's behind the moon. We can use the invisible weather, the invisible energy that rains down from that astral alignment in any moment of time. We can use that astral weather to our advantage, just like we use the weather, the rain, the sun, the hot, the cold. We use all that to our advantage in the garden, as do moon gardeners use the invisible astral weather to their advantage, which I outline really basically in layman terms in my moon garden video, but it'll definitely be another awesome feature of the new documentary style I'm making, Gardening the Sacred Way. And then, you can get into using the magnetic poles, aligning your garden to the magnetic poles of the earth, figuring out the ley lines, any underground water currents, using them there are so many invisible energies, spiritual energies, quantum energies, metaphysical energies that you can work with in your garden. Well, I hope you all got something out of me sharing my perspective of spirituality in the garden. Have a good day, everyone.